Hello and welcome back to An Unpolished Earthling. Today we're continuing to look at our manifesto, Gaia United, a pragmatic path to a healthy future. We're in part 1, the vision section, and we're now looking at assumptions. So these assumptions are kind of where most of the criticisms that I've had come from, and how I'm trying to justify my optimism in spite of those criticisms. So now that we've had a chance to consider what the proposed system might look like, we must begin our critical evaluation of it. To tackle most objections head-on, we must accept that the system will not come into existence unless there is a global paradigm shift. The proposed system is based on certain assumptions about our future paradigm. Today, these assumptions may seem unrealistic, but the whole point of the exercise is to say that if they were true, how would we organize ourselves? That they are not universally true is evident by our current situation, but there is nothing in this universe that can prove that humanity cannot change. Now, without pretending to know that we will change, there is no reason to rule out the possibility that we can. This is why this approach to saving the world has been taken. It is dependent on humanity changing of its own accord, but then integrating those changes efficiently to get the best possible result. This is the reason for the unreasonable assumptions in place of current dominant ideologies. So these assumptions are, number 1, every human being is capable of understanding, and in the course of their upbringing comes to understand, that the biosphere is an interconnected web of life and that it is essential to our survival. Number 2, every human being agrees that to ensure the survival of our species, we must make a society that places the preservation of the biosphere as its prime motive or top priority. Number 3, every human being agrees that every human should have an equal right to an equal portion of the planet's renewable resources. Number 4, every human respects every human's right to freedom of thought, speech, religion, culture, and social and economic organization. Number 5, every human agrees to treat all human knowledge that is not innately personal as a common resource. So let's unpack these here. The first two assumptions are fairly straightforward, although some people still believe that their personal satisfaction in life is more important than the fate of their society, species, or biosphere. These people may think that the biosphere is keeping them alive right now, so as long as it lasts long enough for them to satisfy their desires, then it doesn't matter if it's destroyed after their death or even towards the end of their life. The ideology that can, and hopefully will replace this one, is one of recognition of the planet as a living thing of which we are a part. From this ideology comes a genuine love for the earth as one might love one's family. In this view, a person would understand the merit of considering their own impact on the planet and ensuring that it is kept within reasonable grounds. This is the support for the ecological footprint-based approach to determining land use. The third assumption is required to make the thing a direct democracy. The necessity of having a direct democracy is debatable. And in truth, it is not necessary to ensure the preservation of the biosphere. In theory, even a tyrant could be an ecological preservationist. The argument for the direct democracy is that inequalities, especially unjust ones, give rise to jealousy, envy, and perhaps even hatred, which often lead to malicious actions. To avoid this discontent, a direct democracy gives each individual equal input into the governance of their world, letting them shape it to their own desires. In such a system, inequalities are more acceptable because they are for the most part the direct result of each individual's free choice. This does not completely solve the problem of inequality. Since people are unique, they all have inherent inequalities. Some are born weaker, some stronger, some smarter, some not as smart, some with great vision, others blind, some artistic, some rational, some lazy, some hardworking. Therefore, we are not equal by nature, and furthermore in society, some will earn more rewards than others. And so in the course of our lives, we will be socially and economically unequal also. This means that there will be a natural tendency to discontent in the greater population. To deal with most social and economic inequalities, we must provide equal opportunity and equal liberties, so that a lazy person, though they will not do so, does at least have the potential to work harder and earn more. This allows us to consider economic inequalities of this nature to be fair. Dealing with natural inequalities is much harder, especially when the inequality is so distinct as a case between a healthy, able person and one who is born with severe disabilities. It can be reasonably argued that a person who is unable to contribute much to society, but requires social intervention to survive, benefits by being a part of that society and having access to those services. But whether or not a society should support such people is a matter of virtue and not justice. If, as Aristotle argued, justice is equality, then for society to give without return is unjust. Yet, there is more to what is good than what is economic or material. And as such, by providing society the ability to be charitable, the needy facilitate society's gain in terms of being virtuous. This gain may or may not be equal to the cost of helping the needy. There is also the indirect gain in that other societies might favor this one for its being virtuous, which is a gain on top of the good of virtue for virtue's sake. It may even be true that society profits from helping the needy. However, it is not an objective thing to determine the true worth of virtue in regard to social and economic goods. Rather, it is an innately subjective thing. Therefore, a culture that values virtue will find it good to look after those in need, while a culture that does not value virtue will likely focus on economic efficiency instead. The proposed system semi-sidesteps this dilemma by putting us all on equal human footing, but not saying how we should deal with difficult issues like social welfare and justice. In fact, within the scope of the system, some groups could have social welfare, and others might literally eat the weak. In this system, all such decisions and their justifications are left up to individuals to make on their own. I know I'm using extreme examples there, but the point is, if the system were in place 100 years in the future, anyone can go in and vote how they want, say what they want, and I can't guess what those will be, which is why I've tried to jump to the most extreme examples that I can to illustrate the diversity that we could have. The only stipulation that the proposed system holds everyone to is that no matter what they do it within a reasonable ecological footprint. That way, everyone on Earth gets the equal right to make their own decisions and form their own societies. This raises a major issue. At what age does one acquire their vote? A little bit of a tangent here, but yeah, it is an important issue. Surely, a newborn infant could not effectively make decisions about how best to allocate their energy. Furthermore, if an infant does not require the same amount of energy to live comfortably as an adult does, that wasn't a question. They don't require the same amount. However, if the parents had to support their children on their own energy budgets, it would be a challenge to raise more than 2 children. It would be a challenge to raise 2 children and a burden to raise more. If a woman fell pregnant with twins or triplets or more for her second pregnancy, it might cripple their family's ability to enjoy a reasonable quality of life. If, however, the parents got complete control over their children's vote until they were, say, 16 or 18, it might well encourage people to have huge families. I propose 2 options, although I will certainly not be the one deciding which, if either of them, will be implemented. First, I propose that the parents maintain control over the children's energy budget until they are 13, at which point they control half of the budget and the child controls the other half. When the teen turns 16 or 18 or so, depending on the global consensus of what constitutes a mature person, they gain full control over their vote. Furthermore, the energy budget, and I just want to clarify, I'm not saying the age for adulthood, I'm saying the age for the right to vote, and I don't know if that necessarily needs to be related to what age you are allowed to drink alcohol or smoke cigarettes or any of the other stuff. Those are all cultural things, right? Furthermore, the energy budget for a young person shall increase in increments of 1/4 per year until a full and equitable share of the planet's renewable resources is awarded at 15 years old. The second option is that each community would have a footprint buffer equal to 2% of their population's footprint. This energy is put towards the life support systems of the community so that there is always a slight excess of food, shelter, and clean water. A couple then would only have to pay for the food, water, and clothing for their child, but they would not need to allow extra energy for its survival resources. The first option provides a gradual transition, but it's also a lot more complicated to facilitate. The second option is simpler and provides a bit of a safety net for each community, but it may not be as fair. What will actually happen is up to us, though. So breaking out of that tangent, back into the assumptions. Fourth assumption is that people agree to tolerate differences. This is necessary for the stability of the whole system. If this is not the case, then people will be aggressive towards other cultures. In a system based on voluntary cooperation and restraint, aggressive tendencies toward other cultures would be a large problem. Whether or not this will happen is unknown, but though it is a possibility, there is also a real chance that it will not happen. For once we have a truly global communication system and better understanding of our interconnectedness, perhaps we can mature as a species and cooperate, or at the very least coexist. The last assumption is necessary for the system to give the best results. The idea is that if one group of people decided that they wanted strawberries in their community, there are many ways to cultivate them. If we access the world's botanical resources, we should be able to determine the best methods suited to the needs and desires of this particular group in regards to their own climate and how much of an ecological footprint and what amount of labor they are willing to invest in producing strawberries. By making all knowledge freely available, it allows the greatest overall productivity for humanity, and as a general principle, I think few would disagree with this idea. Now, if we take all of these assumptions together, then the following system should be satisfactory. We take the renewable resource base of the planet, leave a portion to wilderness, and divide the rest up of the resources equally. Each individual would then allocate their energy budget as they see fit, making use of an extensive communication network to organize themselves with others to co-create their dreams. The result is that no matter what cultures arise, they will all be living sustainably. So that's it for the assumptions section. In our next videos, we will jump into part 2, where we begin to talk about how we could actually make this real and possible. Thank you for watching.